thought that who would come to St. Louis and try to take one of our planes? Well, I did it.
The real inspiration for the way our airports look today, the security, the feeling that you're being watched, the feeling that you're not really trusted, that is because of people like Martin McNally.
Now, if you guys didn't know, we're going to dive into one of the wildest true stories ever to come out of St. Louis, a story that sounds more like a Hollywood thriller than real life. So in June of 1972, Martin McNally boarded an American Airlines flight out of Lambert International Airport with a briefcase, a plan, and a dream of escaping it all. Mid-flight, he hijacked the airplane, demanded $500,000 in ransom, and then in a scene straight out of a movie, parachuted out of a Boeing 727 somewhere over the Midwest. It became one of the boldest hijackings in American history. Without further ado, I'm going to start this one off with Danny. He's highly respected here in local journalism, and I'm actually going to say with this story, nationally. So Danny, welcome to Opecast.
Oh, thank you so much. Great to be here.
Let's dive into your background because, this didn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, this was a story that I found back in 2014, and it is something that has kept my attention for years, and it was something that I was not expecting. You don't expect just to find someone who has survived 37 years in federal prison just living in South St. Louis, having this story that he's never really told fully to anyone. And what I found, though, is someone who took the law into his own hands, tried to make it out with $500,000, hijacked a plane, captured the attention of all of St. Louis for days in the midst of a manhunt and a crime. And not only did he do this, he comes back into the public again in 1978 in a prison escape that is almost as ridiculous and hard to believe as his original hijacking. So just someone who is so larger than life and kept showing people why he was that way.
Now, the article came out in 2017 with the Riverfront Times, but you spent years researching and actually speaking with Mac.
Yeah.
How was that first conversation, and then how was it convincing the Riverfront Times to allow you to have, spend that much time and energy on that story?
Yeah, I still remember that first visit with him into his apartment. This was someone who had, again, spent decades in prison, and so I was walking into someone rebuilding their life in a really big way. And I just remember sitting down and my mind just thinking, I just want to know what it was like jumping out of that plane, or I want to know what it was like dropping the money. And I had all of these questions, and I kind of just had to remember this guy has been sitting on this story for so long, and I don't deserve it. I can't make him do this. And so I had to say, be okay with him saying, you can't publish anything until I'm dead, or can you give me any money for this? He kind of put me through a bit of a test, and thankfully I passed it. I think he did trust me that I was in it for the right reasons, and that I would understand his boundaries and his fear. What if people found out that their neighbor was a skyjacker like D.B. Cooper? What if people thought that he really had the money somewhere? So he had a lot of these fears of how people would think about him and whether they would look for him to try to get, information out of him. And I did have to tell my editors, I don't know when this story can be published. I don't know if it could ever be published. And so a lot of it was doing it on the weekends, doing it on the off time. There was a lot of news happening in St. Louis. I was covering the Ferguson protests. I was writing about police and politics and crime. But, every so often I'm like, I got to go talk to Mac for another couple hours. And, interview by interview, I got to know what it was like to jump out of that plane, how he survived in prison, how he tried to escape that prison. And it was a process of years.
You didn't write a book about this, right?
No. It was I wrote a very long cover story for the Riverfront Times, and then I wrote another one a year later, kind of continuing the story and really getting into the other larger-than-life character, one of the several larger-than-life characters, Alan Barkledge, who we can talk about, but who folks will also learn about in the film. Alan Barkledge was the helicopter pilot in 1978 who was hijacked by a woman who had been seduced by one of Martin McNally's buddies, another skyjacker in prison named Garrett Trapnell. And Alan Barkledge was hijacked and actually killed the hijacker, Barbara Oswald, midair, and it just really spirals in an entirely new direction that I don't think anybody was expecting at the time.
How do you balance staying true to the facts while building a compelling narrative for a story that's unbelievable?
Facts are facts. And, one of the main things that I needed to understand about Mac is was he trustworthy? Would he tell me the truth? Was he just trying to paint himself as a hero or better than he was? Would he tell me things that were not flattering about himself? Would he give me his legal files, his criminal cases? And he did. Again and again, I checked what his account was versus the records, and there are so many records, so many news reports. I went deep into the newspaper archives. I looked into his federal appeals. I looked into the legal cases filed by the various states and by his own co-conspirators. And Martin McNally was a lot of things, but he's not a liar. And he really told me what happened. And he took responsibility, I think, for the things that he did. And so when I say, that, he was wearing a wig and, fake grenades and a sawed-off rifle, like that is out of the court files, and that is from what Martin McNally said himself. That is from the evidence files. And we can go all the way into, how did Martin McNally and Garrett Trapnell plan a prison escape from inside prison? We have the records. We have the people who were there who watched it, the FBI agents. This was so meticulously documented. And then over decades, all of that documentation got spread out and lost until I was able to pull a lot of this back together.
You guys have had a relationship now for about 11 years, right?
Yeah.
2014?
2014, yeah. We've been together talking every once in a while, and I got to really see, to be a part of his life in a way here in St. Louis, to see his cats, to see, it is not easy to come out of prison after 1 year, let alone, 37. There's really specific challenges that people have when they end up surviving for that long. They don't have any resources on the outside. I don't think, anyone. Yeah, it's
technology-wise.
It's the technology. I got to see him, using the internet, going on Netflix and seeing like the true crime documentaries that were about people he was in prison with. Like this was someone who like basically came out of prison and found a bunch of the world fascinated with exactly his kind of background and people who he knew who were murderers and terrible people. I would go to him for an interview and he'd be like, here's a new Netflix story. I knew this guy. He murdered 3 prison guards or something like that. Just really wild.
It sounds like he needs a podcast.
We did so much recording with him for the podcast before the film, but yeah, you can hear he has opinions. He is living in America today just like the rest of us. And so it has just been kind of amazing to see him flourish in a way, and knowing that he thought he was going to die in prison, without a doubt.
This inspired a podcast.
Yeah. So after the written stories came out in the Riverfront Times, I was contacted by the folks at Pegalo Pictures, and they initially did this as a film project, but different things happened. COVID by the time COVID happened around as we were producing this thing, it just made more sense as a podcast. So we had these hours and hours of interviews that Eli and Joshua Schaefer as well had recorded with Mac and with all of the people who you're going to see in the film. And so, yeah, this podcast just used the audio, but we did such good interviews and we got into such detail. And I got to work with Eli and Josh and really put a lot of my reporting and my voice and my experience with Mac into this. And so that came out, it had the same title as the Riverfront Times piece, American Skyjacker, which was really, really proud for me.
How did the film come about?
This film actually started before the podcast. I think it's kind of a weird situation, but we're filming all of these interviews, and I think looking into this as how do we visually tell this story? And that part of it, for whatever reason, and I know Eli and Josh were working on the film production part of this that I was not directly part of, that just didn't come together. But there was interest in, the big podcast boom, and we had so many voices and such a story, and I had not done any audio journalism really at that point at all. And Eli and Josh trusted me enough to do a lot of writing and certainly do a lot of voicing and hosting the whole show. And I loved that experience and letting people finally hear Mac's voice, the thing that I got to, hoard for so many years. I got to have this incredible criminal tell me his story firsthand. So that was just such a wonderful moment, and have people have Mac right in your ear telling you what it feels like to jump out of a plane and to move 300 miles an hour as you're falling. You really can't capture that in print fully. So the audio, the visual of it, it is just perfect.
especially for someone that has never jumped out of an airplane, and that was the first time.
Yeah, no experience, no room for error. Just
before YouTube, before all this other stuff, like literally had to learn on the fly.
And I mean, you'll hear him in the film and the podcast talk about, how do you study for something like that? It was part of it was math, but also what do you do when it goes wrong and you're hanging there in your parachute harness, watching the ground get closer, you've dropped the money and you're wondering, when is the FBI going to pick me up? How do you go on? And so, these are extreme experiences and human moments that I don't think anybody has really heard before, and hearing it from Mac himself.
Now, the story starts right here in St. Louis. How did your local connection shape your approach?
I first heard about Mac because I'd heard about Alan Barkledge. Alan Barkledge, folks, I think who are, were driving around in the 70s and 80s and 90s, that is, they would have remembered Alan Barkledge as a voice on the radio. He was a traffic reporter, but he was a combat pilot from Vietnam who flew helicopters in St. Louis and became kind of a local celebrity. I went deep into the newspaper archives. This guy was really popular, and people remembered him not just because of voice on the news, but because he was involved in this unbelievable 1978 prison escape where Alan Barkledge gets hijacked in his helicopter and he has to pull on those combat experiences and actually foil this thing. It is its own incredible part of the story, but I was fascinated by it, and I wrote about him after another helicopter prison escape happened in Canada in 2000. I think it was 2014, and I was like, you know what? This is a good opportunity to remind people about Alan Barkledge and that St. Louis knows how to foil these prison escapes. So a little tongue-in-cheek, a little humorous, but I look online and I find, Alan Barkledge died in a helicopter accident in 1998, and there was an online memorial page. And what do I see on that page? I see an all-caps message saying, Alan Barkledge was a great guy, but we had a plan to escape that prison. I can't really talk about it more because I was involved in the prison escape. Signed, Martin McNally, and had his email address. And so it was a fluke. I was just doing some research. I was maybe arguably wasting some time learning about this historical thing that I was just really fascinated in. And I just stumbled into literally the main character of that story. And I emailed him. And, that was it. We got started, and I came through it the right way, and he respected what I wanted and what I was hoping to do. And that is really how I got on it. It was luck and pursuing my own interests.
And it pays to have that intellectual curiosity of there's more behind everything, And
yeah.
What do you hope people walk away feeling after watching American Skyjacker?
I hope people realize, first of all, that people can change. Martin McNally was a bad person. In 1972, and I think he would be the first to acknowledge that. He used people, and he wanted to get ahead quick and get the money, and he did take people's lives and safety into his own hands. I think a lot of people do change even after making decisions that harm other people and that change their own lives for the worse. And so I think part of it is you can see that Martin McNally understands. He grew up, as an adult, as a person, and that is something that everybody can do. Martin McNally is not unique, and there are many people who reach that point in prison and they never get a chance to leave. They don't get a chance to prove themselves, and Martin McNally managed to just survive long enough, and he thought he was going to die in prison. That should be clear. I think what I hope people also realize is that when they go to an airport today and they look at the system of security and they wonder why it is this way, why do we take our shoes off, or why do we take our belts off? I think a lot of us do think about 9/11 and those attacks, but the real inspiration for the way our airports look today, the security, the feeling that you're being watched, the feeling that you're not really trusted, that is because of people like Martin McNally. Because there was this period of almost mass, almost psychosis, just for a number of years, of where you would have airplane hijackings over and over and over again. And it was a point of our society where we were technologically, we let people travel anywhere. It is a type of freedom that every Roman emperor would have killed to have, and that every basic person in the 1950s and 60s suddenly had themselves. And people like Martin McNally thought that is a target. That is a vulnerability in society. And so they it was something like the Wild West of just a group of criminals that were not going to let society advance in the way that it was. It wanted, Martin McNally and Garrett Trapnell and D.B. Cooper and all the other copycats. They saw stagecoaches. They saw a train, full of treasure, and it was almost like history attacking this advancement. And so I think look at this story and think of just how all of that comes down on just a small group of people who are willing to take that chance and to take that chance over and over and over again. I think everybody who sees this film will have a moment where they thought they could have just stopped. They could have stopped there. They could have, and at every case, they could have just taken a breather and said, maybe let's just finish this prison term out. Let's not do this other hijacking. Let's not drag these innocent people here. And I think that is a lesson we can all take in our own lives. There are times where we should be pushing ourselves, and there are times where we should say, wait a second, do I need to hijack this second plane?
Before we call Mac, I do have a question. I'm sure everybody's wondering, how can they watch this film?
The great news is that right now people can go see it in theaters on a big screen. It's screening at Ronnie's Cinema. That's the IMAX. That is going to be through October 22nd. There's some multiple showtimes. I would get online and check out a date and get those seats reserved and see what is available. The other great news is that this is going to be available for streaming, I believe, November 17th in time for the holidays. And so people will have a chance to watch it however you would like. And the podcast series is already available. So if you want to dive into the story now, or you've already seen the film and you're like, I need more of this, there is more.
I think it's time to call him.
Let's
call
do
Mac. Good morning, Martin. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, St. Louis and Braden, too.
So you hijacked a plane out of St. Louis. What would you like St. Louisans to know about that?
It was a big blunder. I never should have done that. I was stupid. I was unsophisticated as a criminal. And my friends that I trusted were the key figures that got me arrested. And that was the biggest mistake of my life, and it destroyed everything with me. And I did 37 years in federal prisons throughout the country, and 6 years on parole. I was sent to St. Louis by the Parole Commission, and I lived there for 10 years. I really liked that city. I hated to leave that city, but I had no choice. I wound up back where I grew up in Michigan.
How do you feel about having Danny there to help tell your story? Because this is a very historical event that happened here.
I had many producers wanting to get this story throughout the years, and every one of them wanted to throw money on the table to incentivize me and to let them do the story. I rejected all of that, and in 2014, Danny posted something on the internet regarding prison escapes in Canada. I emailed him, and I told him that I know how these prison escapes can be stopped. And from that, he messaged me back, and he said he would like to talk to me about this. So we arranged an appointment. He came into the apartment. I talked to him less than 15 minutes, and I got his credentials, his education, why he wanted to do the story. Everything was, he checked the right boxes, let's say. Oh, one other thing, I told Danny he can't do anything, publish anything until I'm dead. He agreed with that, which was a plus. But after 2 years, I think it was in 2016, I got a message from Kansas City, dudes in Kansas City. Gary Jenkins texted me and called me. He wanted to come to St. Louis to get my story. So I decided right then that I'm going to get the story out now while everybody is living who was participated in this thing. I wanted to get it out before everybody was dead, so that it could be corroborated on what I was saying as true. So we did that. Danny has done very well. That's how he got the story, and it's an incredible story. I have an incredible life history. It's a miserable history, actually, but I survived 37 years in maximum security prisons. I never joined a gang, never got any tattoos, and that's the way it went, Brandon.
If you can go back in that moment, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself that you got to shape up, you got to get a job, forget about it. You're not going to be successful. This is stupid. It's insane, and do something else. You don't want to get involved in dumb shit, and that's what I did. It was absolutely insane. I didn't claim insanity when I went to trial, but there were a lot of these copycat skyjackers who were actually found mentally incompetent. A couple of them I didn't do but a couple of years in prison. I was the only one of the copycats, and there were 23 of us that did over I think 10 years in prison. My 37 years was a rabbit hole, and I regret all of this stuff because my life was destroyed on the failures of not recognizing what I was doing.
What did freedom mean to you back then, and what does freedom mean to you right now?
Freedom then, back in the 70s, that was enjoyable. I liked the freedom, and I don't know why I even thought about doing some stupid nonsense like I did. Freedom now is unbelievable and fantastic because I've been out of prison since 2010. I've been out 15 years, and I wouldn't even think about doing stupid nonsense, criminal stuff, or anything that's stupid. But that's freedom now gives me the opportunity to keep my life level, take care of 2 cats that keep me occupied. Spot is on my leg right now. My oldest cat, he's right here. But freedom is fantastic, and you don't want to throw it away. I don't want to throw it away, never. I'm 81 years old, and I'm on the later stages of my life, so that's it. Freedom is fantastic, no question.
I truly do appreciate your time, and hope you're able to enjoy a beautiful fall there in Michigan.
Yeah, Brandon, I think this is a story that resonates with all the old folks in Missouri, and especially the young folks, because they can see what happened to aviation, why it became so strict on the security, and what actually stopped these aircraft piracies that I was involved in. I had 4 life sentences. I went to prison with 2 life sentences, and while in prison, I picked up 2 more life sentences, plus an additional 10 years in my episodes to get out of prison, escape, and everything. Yeah, I think the people in Missouri, this is a must-see movie, I think, for Missourians. I was a Missourian for 10 years, and why did I go to Lambert Field? Well, that's part of the story. They didn't have any security. in the I think in the entire Midwest, yeah, they were just opened up and vulnerable, and they didn't even realize it. They thought that who would come to St. Louis and try to take one of our planes? Well, I did it. Brandon, it's been good talking to you, and you can always call me.
Will do. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac.
Okay, thank you.
Man, Danny, that was awesome. Thank you for calling, Mac. And now, one more time, how can people watch this film?
You can go to AmericanSkyjacker.com. That's got a link to the tickets. It's showing right now at Ronnie's Cinema in South St. Louis. You can check that out. That's going through October 22nd. This will also be streaming online in just a few weeks by the middle of November, so keep an eye out so you can see this movie whenever you want. And check out the podcast. It is already all there. There is a ton of great stuff, and there's new bonus episodes coming out because we are still finding out more about this story, as crazy as that is.
Well, Danny, thank you for your time. We are going to have all that information listed right below. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. I know you're interested by this story, so go ahead and check it out. Danny, thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.